Hello and welcome to Papa Scare's Horror Stories. Leaving your kids home alone? They're old enough to look after themselves. What's the worst that can happen? Surely only these bad things happen in stories. Well, in this episode, I bring you 6 stories of maybe not the worst, but some of the worst things that could possibly happen when you're home alone. I hope you enjoy. And with that said, let us begin. Years ago, when I was 11, I was staying home alone with only my little brother who was 7. At that time, it was about 9 p.m, dark and pouring rain, and we were reading in our room, right next to the front door, with a big window and open blinds. That's when I hear the front doorbell ring, followed by knocking. I thought my parents had arrived. Strange though that they didn't use the garage or their keys. I looked outside to see their car. Nothing but rain. As I approached the door, I hear a man's voice that was not my father's yell through the torrent.
Would you like some cookies? We're selling Girl Scout cookies.
I'm shocked at this, considering the weather and the time of day. Saying nothing, I check the peephole and peer through the side window, only to see it was not a father with his girl as I expected. My heart dropped. Standing there was just a fully grown man, maybe in his late 50s. No box of cookies in sight. Soaking on my doorstep. I can remember the gut-wrenching feeling of having to check the locks while he was right on the other side. For sure, I heard this. 2 locks were the only things separating myself and my brother from a potential monster. He continued to knock and mention his cookies, as I considered calling the cops. That's when I remembered the blinds were open in my room, where my brother was, with the light on. As I turned the corner into the doorway, I see the man carefully peering into our window, possibly eyeing my brother, distracted in his book. My heart was pounding now as I began to panic. In a move that took all of my willpower, I quickly turned off the lights and ran over to the window to close the blinds, in full view of the man. As fast as I could, I double-checked all the locks in the house, closed all the blinds, and told my brother to go hang out in one of the big closets in the interior of the house. No windows. I didn't tell him what was going on so he wouldn't be frightened. And for some reason I never did call the cops or my parents. I just waited in the hallway until he left. Still thinking about it gives me shivers that so many things could have gone wrong that night. My worst fear since is a stranger getting to the unlocked door before I do. This was about 16 years ago when I was 12. We had just moved into a new house in a nicer area of town to get away from my neighbors who were dealing drugs out of their mailbox. We didn't know at the time that our neighbors had a meth lab in their house. I was home alone during the middle of the day and was making a snack after school. Our front door connects to a foyer that connects to our kitchen. The front door also has 2 windows next to it, where someone can peer inside. I was in the kitchen making a snack when I heard our doorbell ring. Like any kid, I never answered the door when I was alone, so I ignored it. The doorbell kept ringing over and over, and then started banging on the door. I slid onto the floor and peered around the corner into the foyer. I managed to catch a glimpse of a grown man wearing sunglasses, a blazer, and he was bald. Not joking, he looked like something out of a movie. I sat down on the floor next to our kitchen bar so he couldn't see me from the windows, and grabbed our landline off the wall to call my mum. While I was on the phone with her, I heard him banging on windows and trying to open them. We had just moved into this house, so we didn't even have curtains on the windows. I was terrified of this man seeing me. My mum told me to try and hide, and she was coming home and calling the cops. The man continued to circle around the house, banging on windows and trying to pry them open. I was just hoping they were all locked. Eventually, he left, and my mum got home about 30 minutes later. I was shaken to my core. About a year later, our neighbors were busted for having a meth lab. I figured maybe this guy meant to go to my neighbor's house, but got the address wrong. Ever since this experience, I've been petrified of doors and windows being unlocked. I'll often go to bed and wake up just to check the doors, to make sure they're all locked. One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via big double glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees. One I often used to climb up and down from the balcony. This balcony faced out to the street. One night when I was about 13 and my brother and mother weren't home, I was reading a book with a very dim reading light. I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside. But this didn't worry me, as possums and bats are common in our area. Now, I had thin curtains on the glass doors that separated my room from the balcony. As mentioned previously, the doors faced out towards the street, where street lamplight was always visible through my curtains. Shortly after hearing the tree rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly move past the doors, at which point I immediately turn off my reading light and freeze like a deer in the headlights. The shadow is tall, so it wasn't one of the neighbor kids that I'm friends with, and it wasn't my all of 5-foot mother. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they were trying not to be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the streetlights behind them creating a dark silhouette. They moved past my doors, out of sight. I sat there unable to move, or even think about what to do, other than be absolutely still. That is until I heard another sound. The sound of someone trying to open a glass door. My mum's doors to the balcony. I don't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking chances. I moved as quickly and silently as I could to my bedroom door and locked it. I listened for what the person was doing now. They were still jiggling the glass door handle, but it sounded like the doors weren't opening. I felt relief. This person couldn't get in, surely. All I had to do was wait for them to realize that, and then they would leave, right? Well, I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to my set of glass doors until I saw his shadow stop directly in front of them. Again, I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I could see him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door handle, and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked those doors myself today? I was out there earlier. What if I forgot? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity. But thankfully, when this person tried to open the door, it did not open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief. I was worried he had heard it. After this, he began pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile phone as my mum thought me too young to have one yet, and the landline was at the other end of the house. But I was too scared to take my eyes off this person, even to call for help. I was silently crying, tears falling down my cheeks as I internally prayed they would just leave. Then I heard him moving. He then said,
I could just break the glass, you know.
Before I could even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at our property gate. My mum was home. The person on balcony moved out of sight, and I heard a loud thump as they jumped off of it. When my mum came inside, I was hysterical and was barely coherent in telling her what happened. Eventually, I got the message across and she called the police. They never found or caught anyone, but a neighbor reported a truck in the street that matched the description of a truck that had been reported recently for attempted child abductions near my school a block away. Since I walked that short distance daily, the police suspected that he had followed me or seen that I lived there and waited for me to be alone. So creepy dude who scared the hell out of a 13-year-old girl, let's never meet. I was 12, and my older sister and I were home alone for the weekend. I was waiting for a friend to pick me up, and getting restless. There was a knock on the door. Thinking it was her, I ran to answer it without checking through the peephole. A man was standing there with a clipboard and said he needed to check our gas meter. I was entrenched in the disappointment of my friend still not having arrived, so I just told him, "Yeah, sure, whatever you need to do." I didn't notice at the time, but he wasn't dressed as a city official. He had on a green and purple shirt with bold stripes, like the host of Blue's Clues. He came in and immediately went up the stairs to where our bedrooms were and walked into the open door of my room, the typical girly girl room with pink and glitter. Thank God my sister came down the stairs at almost that exact moment. She said, "Oh, is that Daphne's dad? Why is he going upstairs?" And I complained about how Daphne wasn't here and was going on about how unreliable she was, when my sister cut me off. Wait, if Daphne isn't here, who is that? I said he's here to read the gas meters. Her face turned white. She flung open the front door and dragged me out, hand clamped over my protesting mouth. She said, "Our gas meters are outside." Neither of us had a cell phone, it was the 60s, and obviously weren't going back in the house to call authorities on the landline phone. Then my ever-resourceful sister had a stroke of genius. A man was walking right by our house, and she motioned him over. She called, loudly, into the house, "Oh Dad, it's good you're home. A man from the city is here to read the gas meters upstairs." And just like she'd hoped, this man on the street said, "What are you talking about?" The man in the striped shirt bolted out of the house. The man on the street asked us repeatedly if we were okay, if we needed him to stay and wait in the yard with us until our parents came home. He was very sweet. We were so startled that we barely thanked him before slamming and locking the doors and windows. As irate as my sister was that I let someone in the house, she begged me not to call the authorities because my parents left her in charge and she worried she'd be in trouble. I didn't want to catch any heat from carelessly allowing some guy in, so I was on the same page. 3 weeks later, a girl in our community went missing. Same MO. She was home alone, and authorities found the door open and no signs of forced entry. My sister and I discussed our options, but deep down knew we had no choice but to come clean. We told the police everything. I don't know if it ever helped, but they did tell us they had reason to believe it was the same man. They found the girl. They said she'd been held for a few days, and then burned alive. I just thank God every day for my sister's resourcefulness and quick action. False meter reader, let's not meet. My house lies on a 6-acre plot. There was half-cut grass, half forest, and had a pond. We shared a long curvy driveway with 2 other neighbours on a hill, and that was pretty much it. It was late summer, and I got the whole house to myself for most of the day, and well into the night. My mum and 2 brothers were in Utah to visit our sister in college. My dad was working late, and my little sister was at a marching band competition. My little sister and I stayed behind because we both had youth camp that began 2 weeks before the trip to Utah was going to be over. Anyways, it was around 10 p.m. and I was just hanging out in the living room where the computer was located, watching YouTube. Our living room had a sliding door that opened to a deck and then to the massive yard, so I could see the road that went behind our house faintly if I turned on the backlight. I started to get hungry, and so I got up from the living room and walked to the kitchen to grab a snack. The kitchen had a few windows, so I could look out on the front lawn and driveway. I peeked out because I was bored and saw a black truck drive by on the road at the bottom of the hill slowly, which was strange, considering I've only seen people speed down it pushing 70 miles per hour. It's the back roads, no cops ever come by. I just kind of shrugged it off and went back to watching YouTube in the living room. But my eyes kept drifting out to the road behind our house, where I kept seeing the black truck. I would have thought nothing of it, but that street was a dead end, so a truck driving up and down at 10 p.m. was a little weird. I was getting pretty tired and went upstairs to my bedroom, which also had a pretty good view of the back road. I don't remember what time it was when I heard an engine rev at what seemed to be out on the shared driveway. I kind of bolted up and, being the paranoid person I was, assumed the worst. Quite frankly, I think it was my paranoia that saved me, because I crept down the stairs to get a look to soothe myself and prove that nothing was there. But looking out the kitchen window, I saw the black truck in my part of the driveway, headlights off, and faint shadows of two guys climbing out. Freaking out, I paced a bit, trying to think, but nothing more came to mind than to grab a knife and hide, so that's what I did. I hid behind a corner next to the door and heard 2 knocks. Once they faded away, I heard the door handle begin to jiggle. I took a deep breath and yelled out, "I have a weapon! Get the fuck away from my house or else I'll use it." It was so loud I probably woke up both the neighbors by the simple volume of it. A moment later, I heard the faintest, "Oh shit." And then soon after, the sound of tires quickly going down the dirt driveway and faded away. I was so scared I was shaking. But at midnight, my dad finally came home, and I didn't speak anything of it. Most people trying to break in will run off when they find out someone is still home, so making any noise will raise your chances of avoiding a robbery. If I wasn't so paranoid that I had to go check the car myself, I would have been in great danger. Kidnapped, raped, killed, I don't know. So yeah, backroad creepers, let's not meet. So back when I was around 10 years old, a cousin of my father moved in a village near the town I am from. He only had his mother, which he didn't have a very good relationship with, and my dad, the cousin. So in the beginning, he used to come for dinner at ours on the weekend. The cousin was pretty okay, kinda shy, a computer teacher. I liked him because he bought me a video game once. So fast forward a couple of months later, I am home alone with a friend playing Dragon Ball Z on the PS2 because it is raining outside and we can't go. My mum drove to the grocery store and we were pretty absorbed in the game until the doorbell rings. I open the door as I want to get this over with and get back to the game, but I see it's the cousin, soaked from the rain, asking me if my dad's home. I naturally invite him in and take him to the living room. He seems very agitated, on edge, kinda weird. But I am 10 and I thought it's probably the rain and him being wet. He tells me he brought me something, and I remember getting excited. But it was a silly little portable radio, and I was very disappointed. He kept asking where my dad was, and when he will be home, but I had no clue. I got bored of him, so I just left him there and went to my room to continue playing with my friend. And then he also joined us. That's where I felt a bit creeped out. A grown man in wet clothes, sitting in a small people's chair in my room. I think he felt that we were uncomfortable because after a couple of minutes, he said he had to go and that he will come back another time. I told my parents about it and they were very upset that night, but I didn't understand why. The next day, I was to stay home and my parents didn't go to work. I remember my dad walking around the house a lot. Then it all went back to normal. Fast forward like 10 years later. I remembered the dude and asked my dad what happened to him, because I never saw him after that night. Turns out the guy had mental problems and killed his mother and was wanted by the police for 3 days until they caught him. He came to my house and I let him in the day he killed his mother and was hoping my dad could help him or something. He has been in an institution since, and I never saw him again. But that's the story of how I let a psychopath in the house when I was a kid. Thank you very much for watching. That was 6 true Home Alone stories. I hope you enjoyed them. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and share it with someone you think might also enjoy the video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to be kept up to date with future content. If you have any stories you'd like to share on this channel, please send them to scarepapa@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and stay safe.